The PC Engine is one of the systems that I feel never really gets enough credit, not only for how good it is, but also how important it was to gaming in Japan. Released in 1987 as a competitor to the Famicom, it's a bridge between the end of the 8-bit era and the start of the 16-bit. A unique blend of speed, sound, and features that put it square between Nintendo's industry-changing white and red box and Sega's black and magenta powerhouse, with extensions that gave it enough strength to last through the early years of the PlayStation and Saturn. Chiefly among its accomplishments was the fact that it was the first game console to ever have an optical drive extension, 1988's CD-ROM 2, or as it's officially pronounced, the CD-ROM-ROM. No, fuck it, it's the CD-ROM 2. Having a CD add-on so early on, and a successful one at that, led to the PCE having a lot of genuinely interesting and innovative titles, as well as making big strides towards popularizing what we expect from those big titles. Full or near-full voice acting, animated cutscenes, cinematic soundtracks. These are often the kind of games you can go back to without feeling like you're playing something too antiquated, assuming you can understand the library. The English community for the PC Engine is real small. It was a niche console when it was localized here as a TurboGrafx 16 in the middle of 1989, and it's remained as such since then. There's not exactly an active community of people doing archaeology on the vast depths of the English and Japanese libraries. ROM hacks and homebrew are few and far between, and many of the system's most culturally important games have yet to see even an attempt at a translation. So, color me surprised when I logged on to Twitter one day and saw there was a post from romhacking.net announcing that an English translation of a somewhat obscure Japan-only visual novel for the PC Engine just got translated out of the blue. And it's about mecha magical girls and idols. Before the localization of its mildly popular OVAs in the late 90s, Ginga Ojo-sama Densetsu Yuna, or Galaxy Fraulein Yuna in English, was first a pretty successful visual novel on the PC Engine released in late 1992. Following the exploits of Yuna Kagurazaka, a schoolgirl turned intergalactic beauty pageant winner turned idol and magical girl destined to fight against the forces of darkness, the original title was a big enough success to warrant 2 sequels, a spin-off, and 2 canonical OVAs over the course of 6 years in Japan. Even if you're not like me and you aren't particularly into old obscure visual novels on old obscure platforms, the 6 main products that make up the Galaxy Fraulein Yuna franchise are all interesting from a historical standpoint, as they mark some of the earliest titles that veterans and legends of the anime and games industry would work on. And one such man is Mika Akitaka. Mech fans might be familiar with that name, as he worked as a mechanical designer on a number of Gundam series, including Zeta, Stardust Memory, Unicorn, War in the Pocket, Evolve, and Origin. But more closely related to Yuna, he was the person who propelled the MS Girls concept to as mainstream as it could go. Started in mid-1982 and published in magazines like Animech and Crossover Fanzine, they're essentially anime girl wearing power armor versions of various mecha from the Gundam franchise, which are not only rad as hell in terms of design, but are one of the earliest examples of clearly mecha-inspired power armor, bridging the gap between superpowered spandex suits like in Kamen Rider and Tekka Man, and more traditional mecha like Gundam and Votoms, before Saint Seiya, Bubblegum Crisis, the Starship Troopers adaptation, and other early examples took the concept on. These very early MS Girls, illustrated by Masako Sugihara, a not particularly known artist, and Takumi Akai, co-founder of Gainax and known to channel shitposter, aren't particularly similar to what would come later, but still had some undeniable influence and sway. It wasn't until 1985 that Akitaka tried his hand at it and created the Zeta Gundam Girl, and looking at this and his other MS Girls, it's easy to see how they served as a stylistic basis for the power armor here. Being some of his most notable work, it's presumably why Akitaka was noticed by PC Engine juggernaut Hudson Soft, close partners of Red Entertainment. In an interview conducted by EX at Anime Expo 1998, Akitaka stated, "To put it very simply, Hudson came to me and asked me to make a game, so I used whatever ideas I had." That's about all that's known for sure about Yuna's history and development, but the English Wikipedia page expands on this with a bit of unsourced information, which I'll come back to, and the Japanese Wikipedia page, also unsourced, paints a supposed clearer picture. In 1992, Hudson Soft and Red Entertainment asked Akitaka to join them on a new game project. The initial plan would be to create a shoot-'em-up not unlike their previously published game, Gates of Thunder, but this concept was scrapped shortly into development when the title's producer and head honcho of Hudson Soft, Yuji Kudo, requested they take their serious shooter title and create a goofy, silly game centered around a cute and klutzy protagonist instead. Now that's a pretty big shift, but even if this is unsourced, there's definitely some historical and developmental weight behind this story. One of the Yuna art books shows art of her in a very shooter-type costume next to a ship with a power-up orb, and some cut backstory about her being the daughter of Dr. Shin Kanzaka, a bioengineer who designed her with dormant combat capabilities that were recently awakened. Now that's some Gundam shit right there, but this design, which was never shown off publicly until this book, is presumably what Yuna was going to be until approximately 2 months into the supposed 6-month development period, when the first public preview of the game that I could find was published in the July 1992 issue of PC Engine Fan, showing a premise and a number of screenshots that match up exactly with the final game. The added claim unique to the English Wikipedia page is that Mika Akitaka was specifically asked to make a game based on his Gundam F91 girl, which also adds up looking at the similarities between her and Yuna's design, from color to aesthetic choices, particularly aesthetics in the original shoot-'em-up design. I think the most interesting part of this is that the game did start as a shooter, not just because an Akitaka-involved shmup would later happen with the Yuna spin-off Sapphire, but also because that if this story is true, then Kudo likely recognized the PC Engine was already flooded with titles in that genre. And man, if there's anything the system has a reputation for now, it's that it has quality shooters and a lot of them. Like, a lot. Like... That's not to say the console was short on visual novels either, with more than 45 on the platform overall, but Yuna was unique amongst the 17 or so released up to that point. It wasn't a licensed title that required or greatly benefited from knowledge of a series beforehand to enjoy it, like Devil Hunter Yoko or Space Adventure Cobra, and it was a fun and cute ride of cute girls, unlike Chikuden Yatobe or Yamamuta Misa Suspense, two of like 7 VNs on the system at the time that weren't licensed titles. It makes total sense to try and capitalize on that empty market, which is what happened. Yuna was a massive hit when it came out and reviewed positively in magazines, and the soon coming boom in interest in games about cute girls, thanks to titles like Dokusei in late 1992 and Tokimeki Memorial in mid-94, likely helped keep the flame burning up through 98 with the 4th and last title of the series on the Saturn and PSX. Taken all together, Yuna in Japan has been well remembered, even being one of the top 10 most memorable titles on the PCE, according to a Famitsu poll back in 2016. So what was this classic even about? Set a few hundred years in the future, with humanity having managed to explore and colonize far beyond Earth, it follows the adventure of Yuna Kagurazaka, a sweet and completely absent-minded high school student who wins a contest to be crowned as a Galaxy Fraulein, basically an intergalactic beauty pageant, and gains fame all over the galaxy, becoming a celebrity and pop idol overnight. Some short time after this, Yuna gets turned into a magical girl by a cute robot named Elner, and told to fight a battle against the Queen of Darkness, who has, once again, reappeared to convince 13 other Frauleins to help her take over the galaxy for nefarious purposes. It's now up to Yuna, the new savior of light, to find and fight the 13 Frauleins across the galaxy to save them from the darkness, and in turn, save everyone. The story here is nothing that will stay with you for a long time or is particularly exciting, but what it does manage well is to be a fun and comfy ride throughout with a very decidedly TV-like style to its presentation. It has an opening and ending song, eye catches between acts, and an episodic progression that would adapt perfect into a 13-episode show with some exposition and added segments. In many ways, Yuna feels like the spiritual prequel and sci-fi counterpart to the groundbreaking first Sakura Wars title. It's stylistically similar in that it aims to deliver the experience of playing through an interactive anime series, complete with your catchy OP and ED, mid-episode eye catches acting as save screens, moments of Sakuga, and the same episodic structure. Where it diverges is in refinement, complexity, and setting, with special emphasis being placed on exploring the alt history steampunk Taisho Japan, and letting you learn about characters in depth for a complex and anxiety-inducing real-time dialogue system that affects performance in the totally not Fire Emblem tactical RPG segments, with characters falling in love with you or thinking you're a bumbling jackass, and everything in between, depending on your answers. It makes for a far more engaging experience for sure, but it's also a far less casual and vibey one. By comparison, Yuna is much simpler, both by choice and seemingly by inexperience, as a game like this was new ground for much of the staff. It's more than happy to present you with a pretty typical futuristic setting, with just enough world building sprinkled throughout to stay interesting, and a straight path through the game with simple characters and a dumb protagonist.
よくわかんない。簡単に言うと、すっごく悪くてすっごく強い人のことです。なんですって?
The basic game flow is, by result of being so kinetic, a lot more simple than what people might associate with the genre. This is no Fate Stay Night of a clusterfuck of a flowchart that still pales in comparison to some other games, or to be more contemporary, like literally launched the same day contemporary. This is no Snatcher with its puzzles, item inventory, area exploration, and other adventure game elements. You move to whatever area you're told to or just became available and flip between looking and talking until something new happens and you can continue along the story. There are a few choices here and there, but they only result in a few bits of unique dialogue and loop back to the choice until you pick right. It feels like the adventure elements of being able to roam around and take actions sort of freely are here more out of obligation because it was the norm for VNs at the time to have them, even if they're functionally useless here. For all the little drops of world building and genuinely cool settings, this isn't a game about those things even if it had the potential to be. What it wants to be, and succeeds well at, is being a briskly paced story in the Monster of the Week style. Just replace Monster with various caricatures of an Ojo-sama, and you've got the gist of it. You adventure around a location, find one of the 13 Frauleins, battle against them, and then proceed on to do it over and over again. That's how the flow be, and it do be good just because of how colorful and fun the cast is. You have the angry girl, bratty girl, preppy girl, tired girl, horny girl, cute girl, and a bunch of others that all play well off of Yuna's good meaning and completely head-empty nature. Girl is just not interested in fighting most of the time. She would rather try to be friends, even when the people she's fighting don't want to, and she's just too dense to understand that. I worried about an hour or two into the game that it would get dull and unfunny just because of how much her head emptiness is her defining trait, but the game genuinely manages to make it work from both a comedic and character standpoint. A big part of this is because the game doesn't just call her dumb over and over again. Instead, there's a bunch of different scenarios and events that come from her personality being what it is, and are funny in their own right, be it for their absurdity, comedic timing, or any number of reasons. One of my favorite bits comes from early in the game. She gets a brand new spaceship to fly around in and goes to the spaceport to take it for a ride, but ends up finding she forgot her license, which should be an easy thing to find, ends up taking her through her entire room and talking to nearly everyone at school, getting into a karaoke contest with one of her teachers, going to her idol agency and appearing as a TV guest, nearly dying a few times, battling a Fraulein, and all just to find a person there who was keeping it safe. It's a really cute and goofy scenario, and there's a bunch of these throughout the adventure, and that's to say nothing of the characters. From Yuna's rival, friend, and totally not a gay crush Polylena, Elner's serious and focused nature and how it plays off of Yuna, as well as the other robot being things you meet along the way, to even just the guy who vends you a hot dog just for being the one person who appreciates his food. Everyone minor and major makes this a really fun journey. It's also a lot of fun to see a story unfold with a protagonist that isn't a genius, but also doesn't have the work done by everyone else. Even if Elner and the Robo Gang are guiding her along through a lot of it, she's still the one pushing on, giving saving the universe her all when she has to and battling the Frauleins of Darkness. Oh yeah, the battles. This is the sole element of the game that doesn't play like a VN, and it's not great. You only have a few actions in combat. You can fight, regain dignity, which I'll explain in a second, and leave, which does nothing. Fighting consists of picking an action for a turn, either doing a physical attack of a light or heavy action, or laying the verbal smackdown on your opponent, which is pretty amusing until you've run through all the dialogue for a fight. While physical attacks are free to use, it's entirely RNG if they hit your opponents, and while verbal attacks are guaranteed hits, You lose dignity when you use them, and you need to spend a turn regaining it once you've lost all of it. It's pretty silly, and also not particularly engaging. There is no sort of stat progression beyond number go up at the start of every new encounter, and combat has no strategy whatsoever. You win simply by spamming regain dignity and verbal attacks, or by using the same physical attack over and over. I eventually just let God, also known as the turbo button, do all the work in fights, and it made it significantly more bearable, because this stuff still takes a century to resolve just because the animations for actions are unskippable and long. Thankfully, there's no consequence for dying besides needing to skip for a bit of dialogue, so you're not too screwed if RNG doesn't favor you. I can't really think of any good reasons why combat this bare bones and stripped down is in here, given that it's not shown off on the game's jewel case to try and attract some RPG game buyers, except I do have some theories. One, the staff just thought the RPG battles were cool and wanted to stick them in here somehow, which I respect that. And two, they wanted to make the players put some effort in to see this. Did you know this game has ecchi elements? I sure didn't before going in, and the only pre-release mention I can find of it comes from that PC Engine fan preview. While there is some fan service strewn about, mostly just some girls in swimsuits, Yuna is overall fairly tame with exception of these CGs at the end of battle that show the girls in various states of embarrassment and defeat. The ecchi element of these is treated really casually by Yuna for the most part, which, besides one instance, she's usually more worried about them being hurt or just mad at them for being mean to her, which does make for some really fun moments. Also, maybe I'm just a weird girl who cares an acute amount about technical accomplishments, but the CGs in this game overall are way more interesting to me from that standpoint than the horny bits. It's a treat to see full or near full screen art of this detail, of this regularity, and well before a lot of other technical showpieces on the console no less. This came out a year before games like Ys 4, Rondo of Blood, Sapphire, and Popful Mail. The amount of detail they were able to squeeze into a 256 by 240 resolution image is really incredible. This game is gorgeous to look at if you have a really vibrant display, like a nice CRT or a modern OLED. Parts of the art team here previously worked on the Tengai Makyo series, particularly Second, which is another game that manages to look really impressive for the platform. However, one art member of particular note who previously hadn't worked on any games is Hidenori Matsubara. He's a freelance artist that worked with Gainax from 1988 to 1996, and did character design for the Sakura Wars series, Gankutsuo, Key Animation and Lane, Perfect Blue, Oh My Goddess, and maybe most notably on Neon Genesis Evangelion. Episode 26. Petty digs aside, it's no surprise that the game ended up looking so good with the level of talent here. That extends far beyond the big cinematic moments too. The moment-to-moment art of exploring planets and the numerous gameplay window CGs, even the UI, are all a joy to look at, if a bit extraneous. Like this absolutely massive window that shows Yuna in different poses depending on where you are in the game, or the compass looking thing that actually just exists to tell you how many of Eleanor's friends you've found. I think it was all done just to fill space on the screen and save development time by reducing the amount of drawing needed to be done on various Windows CGs, and it's a real silly and fun way to do it. So I was gonna do this whole bit in the video where I talked about the PC Engine's FMV capabilities and how I was shocked Yuna didn't have FMV and it was gonna fit in right here. And I ended up cutting this because the entire bit was about how the PC Engine's FMV capability was bad compared to something like the Sega CD or the CDI. That's completely untrue. I was going off my hazy memory of what Sega CD games looked like. I just looked at them again, and the 7 games on the PC Engine that have FMV look so much better than most Sega CD titles, which isn't saying much. Most Sega CD games look pretty bad. They're not good. But this gives me an excuse to talk about something I didn't record in that entire bit-dinger. So I was talking about Yuna's bonus CD that was packed in at the re-release that did have FMV. It has an FMV-ified version of a commercial of the game, which I showed earlier in this video, and if you let that commercial play out, or just hit the run button, you can actually see a bunch of just different stills of Yuna artwork, and I've never seen anyone mention this, but I thought that was pretty cool. Also, if you're wondering why I didn't just, like, rewrite and re-record that whole section of the script, it's because I just moved to a new apartment. I've moved, like, a bajillion times, and I didn't know how to get an audio setup that didn't have reverb. Turns out I just have to sit closer to my microphone. But I went through this whole effort of downloading this reverb remover program for Logic Pro, and the trial ran out after I recorded my whole script and reverb removed it, and I didn't feel like recording an unreverbed version of the script. So, don't worry, I'll fix it. The next videos will be better, probably, hopefully. Okay, bye. The team at Stargood did an amazing job taking the original script and creating what feels like a professionally put together localization, with a witty and goofy sense of humor that doesn't feel out of line with the few officially localized Yuna works, and some genuinely incredible hacking work, most notably adding subtitles to the full screen cutscenes and the opening, ending, and title screen. Oh yeah, this soundtrack bops, by the way. With exception to one song, it was done by the T's Music team, now known for their work on various Nintendo titles, but PC Engine fans almost definitely know them for their work on the two Thunder games, and that shooter spin-off I mentioned before, Sapphire, which are all god-tier soundtracks that you should pause the video for right now and listen to, right now. Unlike their other works, the soundtrack here is much more typical video gamey and almost purely chiptune to make room for the impressive amount of voice acting this game has on disc, but they still bop hard if you like the crunchy sound of the PC Engine sound chip. The only unfortunate part is that there's only one, rarely two track for each world in the game, and each of them loop about a minute in, so you might get tired of them fast depending on how quick you read. I didn't get too bored of them in my time playing, but I also rarely let the voice acting play out for its whole duration. If you're someone who likes to do that when reading visual novels, then you're probably gonna get exhausted sooner than later. There are some real cute touches to the soundtrack though, namely the musical cues that play for each of the Fraulein of Darkness when you encounter them. I like them a lot. I also really like the opening and ending songs sung by Yuna's voice actress Chisa Yokoyama. It's nothing compared to her performances in the Sakura Wars soundtrack, and frankly these songs are pretty cheesy and silly, but they do a great job at setting the tone of the adventure and closing it off respectively, as does the very 80s hard rock song that plays on the title screen, composed and performed by Pink Sapphire. They're a hella obscure all-girls band that has a shockingly good discography if you enjoy that sort of music, which I very much do. And yeah, that's Galaxy Fraulein Yuna. Is it going to top Best of PC Engine games lists and dethrone titles like Magical Chase, Lords of Thunder, Rondo of Blood, and Ys 4? Probably not, but it is a good time that fans of visual novels in late 80s, early 90s anime will get a kick out of. I'm glad I spent the 6 or so hours to read through the story, because it's one of the few games recently that's really reminded me how important and fun these simple, fluffy, happy stories can be. It's a game made by a group of people who think mechs and power armor are cool, anime girls are cute, and it's a game about the power of friendship and good triumphing over evil, and that's the exact kind of comfort food and I think a lot of others, really need in difficult times like this. I truly hope that the Stargood team manages to find a time to translate the next game in the series and possibly beyond, because I'm excited to see where Yuna's PC Engine adventures go next. With how difficult and time-consuming projects like this can prove to be, I'd understand if they didn't go further, but man, it would make me happy to be able to check out the rest of the franchise. For now, we'll just have to make do with the animes.